Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the Law Commission's presentation about the research assistant role. My name is Miles Rice, I'm a research assistant on the criminal law team. There's broadly going to be 4 parts to today's presentation. First, we want to talk to you a bit about the work that we do at the Law Commission. Secondly, we want to discuss the research assistant role and give you a bit more information about what that entails. Thirdly, we're going to discuss the RA application process and give some tips for making a good application. And finally, we're going to have a Q&A where we'll answer questions that you have about anything we've discussed, or more importantly, anything that we've omitted in the presentation about the aforementioned areas. Next slide, please. So a few points for housekeeping. This event is being recorded and will be posted to our website and onto our YouTube and will be shared afterwards. Microphones and cameras are switched off for all attendees, so that's perfectly normal. Don't worry if that seems a bit odd. That's intended. If you have a question, please post it into the Q&A section of the call. It'll be reviewed by our team before it's published. Please make sure that you submit any questions before we get to the Q&A. It will give you a better chance of having your question answered. I might not have a chance to review your question and then publish it after the Q&A started. Given time constraints and the number of attendees, we'll not be able to answer and publish every single question put to us. However, we will attempt to answer as many questions as possible that have not been addressed elsewhere in the presentation. There may be questions which, if somewhat more technical, potentially about the recruitment process, we may not be able to answer just now. And so if one of those questions does come up or we've not addressed something, feel free to email recruitment@lawcommission.gov.uk with your queries. I'll remind you of this again at the end of the presentation. Please, finally, don't use the raise hand function. It'll interfere with the recording and it doesn't make it any more likely that your question will be answered. We will lower any hands that are raised. So, to start the presentation, I'd like to pass over to one of our CEOs, Joe Otterburn, to give some introductory remarks and talk a little bit about the value of the work that we do here at the Law Commission and how the RAs feed into that. Joe.
Great, thank you very much, Miles. I'm Joe Otterburn. I'm Joint Chief Executive of the Law Commission, as Miles said, with my job share partner, Roshni Patel. The opportunity of being a research assistant here at the Law Commission is a rich and rewarding one at any stage in your legal career. It combines stimulating, purposeful work, experience of working in the public sector and closely with government departments and Parliament, and being part of a collegiate team of legal experts. The work of the Law Commission is quite unique, in fact, in the public sector, in that we work so closely with government, but we are nonetheless independent. And as a research assistant, you get to learn about the workings of officials and of ministers, but you also get a very external focus to the work because there is such a high degree of consultation and interaction with a broad range of stakeholders across all of our projects. And just to give you a flavour, we've currently got 18 projects underway at various stages for 7 different departments and the Welsh Government. So it is a great opportunity to get a taste for public service. The work of the organisation has very real purpose and very real world impact. And to give you some specific examples of our projects, we have them ranging from evidence in sex offence prosecutions to disabled children's social care. We've got civil liability arising from AI to agricultural law in Wales, financial remedies on divorce, and criminal appeals, and that is obviously just a few of the 18 that we've got underway. So there's a very diverse range of topics, but knowledge of those areas is not essential. When you're working on the projects, you get the opportunity to develop your legal research, knowledge, analysis, communication, and writing skills, which will be useful elsewhere in your career as well. And you also become part of a network. We have a very strong alumni network here at the Law Commission, but you will also join as part of a cohort of research assistants. And from that, you build bonds, you have support and a network to develop with whilst you're with us. Finally, I'd like to mention the culture of the organisation. Our values are very much around independence, integrity and expertise, but we also take a lot of pride in the Law Commission being a place of shared learning, of collaboration and inclusion. Today is an opportunity for you to learn more about the Law Commission and the research assistant role and the application process. And you will hear directly from current Law Commission staff who are on the call, which include current research assistants, lawyers and colleagues from our human resources team. But I invite you, as you are listening to them, to just observe the passion and the pride with which they talk about their work at the Law Commission. And I hope that that in itself will be enough to persuade you of everything that I have shared with you this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Jo. I'm Jessica Skins. I'm a lawyer I'm the criminal team. I'm going to talk to you about the Law Commission as a statutory body. So it was created by the Law Commissions Act of 1965, and the Act stipulates the composition of the Law Commission. It says that the Law Commission must be made up of a chair, who has to be a judge of the High Court or of the Court of Appeal, and also 4 commissioners who should be either a suitably qualified judge, lawyer, or legal academic. The Act describes our purpose, which is set out for you on the slide there, which is promoting the reform of the law of England and Wales. The Act also describes our function, which we summarise on our website and also on the slide, which is to ensure that the law is fair, modern, simple and cost effective. So we carry out this function by examining where there are areas of law which are causing problems, considering options for reform in consultation with various stakeholders, and then making recommendations to the government for change. We can move on to the next slide, please. So the next slide is about what we're about. So the Law Commission is a non-departmental public body, which is a type of arm's length body. So that means we do have a role in governmental processes, but we are independent of government in relation to the recommendations that we make. So we operate at arm's length from ministers, hence the name arm's length body. Although we are independent, we are sponsored by government, and our core funding comes from the Ministry of Justice. So before undertaking projects, we also have to secure agreement from the government that it has a serious intention to take forward law reform in that area. As the slide says, our jurisdiction includes both England and Wales, and that means that we undertake work for and advise both the UK and Welsh governments on matters of law reform. We also work with the Welsh Advisory Committee, which is a body which advises the Welsh Government on law reform in Wales. I'm going to hand over to Will now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Will de Vries, and I am a first-year research assistant in the Commercial and Common Law team. So as you can see, we are based in the Ministry of Justice at 102 Petty France in Westminster. We're a stone's throw away from St James's Park and within walking distance of both the Supreme Court and Parliament. Our closest tube station is St James's Park Station, but we have people walking in from Victoria or Green Park or indeed further afield. To the next slide.
Hi everyone, my name's Cyber. I'm a first-year research assistant on the Commercial and Common Law team. So I'm going to speak a little bit about how we are organised. So the Law Commission is a fairly small body consisting of around 90 people. On the executive side, we do strategic governance, the chair, the 4 commissioners, our chief execs, Joan Roche, and head of legal and corporate services. So corporate services look after the effective running of the commission. The chair currently is Sir Peter Fraser, who oversees our work and sits as a judge in the Technology and Construction Court and Commercial Court. Each team is headed by a commissioner who are experienced judges, barristers, solicitors, or teachers of law. And then you have your team managers who oversee the day-to-day running of projects, lawyers who lead each individual project, assisted by both legal assistants and then research assistants who contribute to the project work. All of us work in the same office. We have our team desks in a row, and then on either side, bookending us, are the commissioners and corporate services. So it's a very collaborative structure. Everyone sits together. You're next to your fellow research assistants, the lawyers you're working with. And all in all, I'd say it's a really approachable feeling in the office. You can chat to anyone. You can get to know people from different backgrounds, which has been a really lovely experience. And I'll pass on to Rosie.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rosie. I'm one of the lawyers in the criminal team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we select our projects that we do. So we have two main ways that we take on projects. And the first is through a programme of law reform. And so every sort of 3 to 5 years, we will agree a programme which consists of sort of roughly 2 to 5 projects per team that we will work on until the next period of programme. And how we develop that list is that we invite ideas from our stakeholders, from members of the public, and we do initial research to scope out the sort of suitability of those ideas, and we consult with the public at large as well. And we do that to sort of narrow down the programme to a sort of a final shortlist that we then agree with the Lord Chancellor. And I'll talk a little bit about our current programme that we're working on for our 14th programme of law reform in a bit. The second way that we take on projects is through departmental references, and that's when a government department asks us directly to look at a particular area of law where there's an issue or particular challenge. And if everyone agrees that it's the right type of area for us to do, and we've got capacity, then we can take that on as a direct reference. At any one time, most teams are doing a mix of programme projects and departmental references. And I think that sort of gives a real range of projects, both that we end up doing, but also that we can sort of scope out from the ideas that we get for potential law reform projects as well. And that means that we end up doing a lot of sort of research in a huge variety of legal areas, and including sort of really non-traditional legal topics as well, which is really interesting. And for example, lots of recent projects that we've taken on or that we're sort of scoping out as potential future projects include things around the role of AI and new technologies and how the law can and should sort of respond and shape the way that that's moving as well, which is exciting. So what makes a project right for us? We're a pretty scarce resource at the Commission, and so we can't do all the projects that come our way. So what we look at really is sort of the importance of the project, of the area of law, what reform could do. We also look at sort of the suitability. Is it complex enough? Is it the type of topic where an independent body is best placed to look at it? We have to consider our resources as well. Can we deliver what's needed in the time that's needed? And does it fit with our priorities? And also, is there sort of a sufficient level of departmental support for it to be worth us taking on? The next slide then is just sort of a bit of an overview of where we're at with our 14th programme of law reform. So we are currently finalising what will be our 14th programme. We had our public consultation in 2021, and you can see from the slide there that we had a really huge engagement and input from public and interested stakeholders. It was paused whilst the government changed at the recent general election, but we are now picking that up, working on our shortlist and hoping to agree that next year. So I'm going to hand over now to Clara.
Thank you, Rosie. I'm Clara. I'm a research assistant in the Property, Family and Trust Law team, and I'm going to talk a bit about the stages of the projects and also implementation of the projects, which is on the next slide. Rosie's actually covered pretty much how we acquire projects. It's either through the programme or through ministerial reference. And as she said, it's really about the decision to take on a project is really to do with the suitability of the Law Commission to doing the law reform work. And that's really a question of the scope of the project, you know, what the costs and benefits of the project are, how serious the government department is about doing the project. And the main decision that's being taken is that the team, if a project is being taken on, a team will produce what's called a project planning document, which will be submitted to approval from the commissioners. And once that's been approved, the team will then start drafting what's called the terms of reference. And the terms of reference basically delineate exactly the scope of the project that then ensues. The next stage is the pre-consultation stage, which is where the team will do preliminary research on the current law. Often they will do statistical research, also comparative research, so how this is being looked at in other jurisdictions. And that culminates in drafting a consultation paper, which will set out the questions that we want stakeholders and the public to answer in our consultation phase. Once we have conducted that consultation and we've engaged with the stakeholders and we have received all the responses to the consultation paper, we then move to the final report and drafting stage, which also often is accompanied by drafting a draft bill. And at this point, you know, you'll do some sort of qualitative analysis of the consultation paper, of the consultation responses, to see, you know, what of the options that have been sort of discussed in the consultation paper are best for law reform. And that culminates in a final report, which is again subject to approval by the commissioners and often is accompanied by a draft bill. Once the final stage, of course, of that is publication, and publication is also some sort of happening simultaneously with what we call the implementation period. In terms of how law reform recommendation or law commission recommendations, I should say, are implemented, there is the main method by which they're implemented is through primary legislation, through a government, through a bill that is part of a government legislative program. And what that involves is submitting a bid together with the sponsoring ministerial department to the Parliamentary Business and Legislation Committee, who will then secure hopefully a slot on the parliamentary legislative timetable for that bill to then go through Parliament in all of its normal stages. That process is quite lengthy. And even though government have to respond to our recommendations within 6 months, they don't need to actually implement them within 6 months. So quite often there is a significant delay between accepting of our recommendations and actually implementing them through primary legislation. There is also a special procedure where the second reading in the House of Lords is a second reading in the committee stage, and some law commission bills do go through the special procedure. The advantage of that is that it takes up less parliamentary time, so there's less competition with all the other sources of bills and legislation across government. Sometimes we can also implement through secondary legislation. Again, that's a question of whether the law reform recommendation is secondary legislation. And other times we might implement reform through amending codes of practice, so statutory codes of practice and regulatory codes of practice. Again, it has the advantage of being quite easily updated and reviewed and taking ministerial time. And the last way in which sometimes reforms are implemented, or at least considered, is through judicial recognition in the case law. And a good example of that is that the Law Commission did a project on the illegality defence, which was then referred to by Lady Hale in Patel and Mirza, which is now the authoritative decision on illegality. So those are the 4 ways. I will now hand over to the next speaker.
So I'm going to run you through some of the projects that the commercial and common law team are working on. So first project, as on the screen, is a project on co-ops and community benefit societies, which are currently governed in the UK by an act dating back to 2014. And co-ops are associations which aim to harness economies of scale. The Law Commission has been asked to review the legislation relating to this. A somewhat related project is our Friendly Societies project. The Law Commission has again been asked to govern frameworks governing friendly societies, which go back to 1974 and 1992. And we've been asked to see if they align with the needs of friendly societies in modern day and appropriately regulate them. Turning to digital assets, so the commercial and common law team does a lot of work relating to emerging technologies. Our digital assets and private international law project is currently at its pre-consultation stage, and the project is looking at what court has jurisdiction over digital assets such as crypto tokens and what law should be applied when disputes arise in relation to them. Our arbitration project involved reviewing the Arbitration Act 1996 to see whether it aligns with the UK's leading role as a destination for commercial arbitration. The project is now being completed, and the Law Commission are assisting with the passing of the arbitration bill, which is based closely on the recommendations the Law Commission made. And finally, the commercial and common law team is working on an array of scoping projects and considerations for emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, looking at the possibility of changing product liability and civil liability frameworks to address these emerging challenges.
Thank you, Saiba. I'm just going to run through the current projects we have in Property, Family and Trust team, which is a very variable team. We started with business tenancies, which is a project that's in its consultation phase at the moment. And that is looking at whether we should reform the right to renew a commercial leasehold, which is governed currently by the 1954 Landlord and Tenant Act. And they are looking at whether essentially we should either take away that right or make it keep the opt-in scheme, or keep the opt-out scheme, I should say, make it an opt-in scheme, or abolish the right to renew altogether. The other project, this is the project that I'm working on, is financial remedies on divorce and dissolution. That's a scoping report in which we're scoping what the current issues of the law are and whether what the potential options for reform are. At the moment, the issue is that the regime, the statutory regime which governs financial remedies on divorce and dissolution, gives quite a wide discretion to judges to decide the order, and that makes it quite difficult for people who don't to go to court to have a good understanding of what the likely financial remedies outcome would be, which leads to delays of the resources, so on and so forth. The wills project is in its very final stages now and is actually being accompanied by a draft bill, which the team are working with the bill team on. And they are looking at reforming quite a lot of both statutory and common law rules relating to wills, including the formal substantial validity of wills, issues surrounding testamentary capacity, whether formalities under Section 9 of the Wills Act can be dispensed with in certain circumstances, and common law doctrines like adoption, revocation, deathbed gifts, and also the potential for registering wills. And as I say, they're in their final stages of their project now. The burial and cremation team are still just in their consultation phase now, and they are looking at the problems that arise with lack of access to burial ground and whether we can reopen and reuse existing burial grounds, depending on where those grounds are and who governs them, are governed by different acts. Often those acts date to almost 200 years ago. And in terms of cremation, although the act that governs cremation is slightly more modern, there are sort of issues relating to collecting ashes and sort of environmental concerns about crematoria and whether the legislation needs to be updated in that respect. And that is part of a wide project, which includes the new funerary methods project, which the Public Law and Law in Wales team are also involved in. The final project is chancel repair liability project. Chancel repair liability is an ancient obligation that attaches to land, which requires the owner of a land to repair their local parish church. And the project is reviewing the process and effect of registering that liability against land.
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmin. I am a legal assistant in the criminal law team. So at the moment we have 4 projects that we're working on. We have a project on evidence in sexual offence prosecutions, which is looking at the trial process and the law guidance and practice relating to the use of evidence in prosecution of sexual offences. We have a project on criminal appeals, which is looking at where reform is required to enable the correction of miscarriages of justice and to ensure that appeals can be dealt with effectively, appropriately and fairly. We also have a project on contempt, which is what I'm working on, which is looking at reform of the law of contempt to improve its effectiveness, consistency and coherence. And the scope is very broad for this project. So it looks at sort of everything from codification and simplification of the law to the substance of liability and sanctions and the procedure for contempt proceedings. And finally, we have a project on defences in domestic homicide, which is looking at the use of defences in domestic homicide cases in light of modern understandings of the effects of domestic abuse on victims. I'll pass over to Chloe.
Hi everyone, I'm Chloe. I'm a research assistant in the Public Law and Law in Wales team. So the Public Law team has 5 ongoing projects at the moment. 2 are in the initiation phase, 1 is in pre-consultation stage, and 2 are in the consultation phase. So taking them as they come up on the slide. So disabled children's social care. So the law on disabled children's social care in England is currently governed by a patchwork of legislation, some of which dates back more than 5 decades. This has contributed to variation in the amount and quality of support provided by local authorities and complicated routes to accessing support for the parents and caregivers of disabled children. So the Commission is looking at the law and policy on social care for disabled children in England. And the overarching aim of the review is to simplify and strengthen the law, ensuring that the system is fair and works for children, parents, and other caregivers and local authorities. Then we have autonomy in aviation. So recent breakthroughs have seen the development of new, innovative, autonomous and highly automated systems and vehicles. These include drones, as well as advanced air mobility vehicles, such as vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. That's a new one that I learned by coming here, which all provide short journeys for a small number of people. The project reviews existing legislation to identify any legislative blocks, gaps, or uncertainties. And the Commission will consult with key stakeholders in the aviation and innovation sectors before proposing a series of law reforms that will ensure that the UK is ready to take advantage of oncoming advances in automation. Then there's the compulsory purchase project. This is the project that I'm working on. Compulsory purchase is a legal mechanism by which certain bodies can acquire land without the consent of the owner. The ability to purchase land using compulsory purchase powers is essential for large-scale projects to improve both local and national infrastructure. At the same time, compulsory purchase powers can cause significant detrimental impacts on those individuals and businesses affected by them, and they should only be used as a last resort. We've been asked to review the law on compulsory purchase procedure and compensation. Some of this law dates back to 1845, and we will be producing a draft bill or bills that consolidate, codify, and make technical changes to the law of compulsory purchase. Then we have our agricultural law in Wales project. The law which governs the agricultural sector in Wales is spread across a patchwork of legislation. This makes the law difficult to access and, in places, hard to understand. The Law Commission will be considering and making recommendations on how to make the law in this area easier to find and understand. And finally, there is the new funerary methods project, which Clara mentioned earlier. So burial and cremation are currently in use as funerary methods in England and Wales, but companies are also developing new funerary methods. These include delightful phrases like alkaline hydrolysis and human composting. In England and Wales, new funerary methods are currently unregulated, other than by laws which apply more generally, such as environmental and planning law. And so this project considers what an appropriate regulatory framework might look like, factoring in concerns such as the dignity of the dead, environmental and public health concerns. And now I'm going to pass on to Georgina.
Hi everyone, so I'm Georgina and I'm a research assistant in the Public Law and Law in Wales team, and I'll be running through some brief aspects to the research assistant recruitment process. So each year we recruit up to 18 research assistants in total, and successful applicants who apply in January 2025 will start in September 2025. Research assistant contracts will be offered for just under 2 years by default, with an option for applicants to select a 1-year contract if preferred. You will apply to one of the 4 teams previously mentioned. You cannot apply to more than one, and you do not, however, apply to a specific project. If you're successful, that's something that's determined later on in the recruitment process. There is also an opportunity to extend the contract, but this depends on whether the project that you're assigned to requires it. So I'll now be passing on to Yasmin and Abby.
Okay. So Abby and I are going to just run through the stages of a project and talk about what the sort of role of an RA would be through each stage. So I should start by saying that this can really differ depending on the team you're in and the project you're in. So this is really just based on our experiences. So firstly, in the pre-consultation stage, really what this involves is doing desk-based research as an RA. So that involves researching legislation, case law, sometimes looking at the law in other countries, usually countries like Australia, Canada, where their systems are quite similar to ours, so they are good ones to compare with. And the point is to understand the current law and identify sort of any issues that require attention essentially for the project. So as a research assistant, you'll often be doing a lot of that research and potentially drafting research notes for the project team to consider. You also do some pre-consultation stakeholder engagement, which involves meeting with a range of stakeholders to ensure that you are sort of receiving and becoming aware of the full range of issues and different perspectives that are relevant to your project. So as an RA, you'll often be involved in liaising with the stakeholders, arranging those meetings, doing minutes, and sort of keeping in touch with them if they contact you afterwards. And throughout the project, you may engage with them again at a later stage in the consultation stage, which Abby will speak to. So you sort of have developed those relationships with those stakeholders, and you, in that stage, the pre-consultation stage, you also, as a team, start developing policy and thinking about what the proposals or questions might be that you put that end up in the consultation paper. So as a research assistant, you'll again often be involved in doing some drafting for that and putting together policy notes for the team to consider, and potentially, depending on your project and team, you might have the opportunity to draft chapters of the consultation paper, which will end up being published. So that's an overview of what it looks like being an RA on the pre-consultation stage. I'll now hand over to Abby to talk about the other stages.
Thanks, Yasmin. I'm Abby. I'm also a research assistant on the criminal team. And as Yasmin said, I'm going to be talking about what a research assistant does after the pre-consultation stage, so from consultation onwards. After a consultation paper is published, the project moves into consultation. This involves many more meetings with stakeholders, like Yasmin described, but this time to gain their feedback on our provisional proposals for reform. Research assistants will help organise these meetings and will take minutes so that we have a record of all the feedback we receive. Stakeholders will also submit written responses to the consultation paper with their views on the questions that we've asked in the provisional proposals for reform. Research assistants are likely to work on analysis of these responses, which involves reading through all of the responses to a particular consultation question or chapter and identifying key themes, points, and questions that arise from these. This analysis will then be used for policy development to determine whether we should recommend what we provisionally proposed. If there are additional points or new issues that come up in consultation, there may be further research that a research assistant will conduct. Research assistants might also be involved in writing up policy notes from this analysis or attend and discuss the issues at policy meetings with the lawyers and the commissioner. Once the team has confirmed the recommendations for reform, the research assistants will help prepare the final report for peer review. And if this is accompanied by a draft bill, a research assistant might also help with drafting instructions to Parliamentary Council. So a day in the life of a research assistant will vary depending on the stage of the project and the team, but usually involves a mixture of meetings, independent research or writing, and working with other members of your project team. So to give an example from my own day in the life, I'm currently working on our project of offences in domestic homicide, which is in the pre-consultation stage. So a typical day might involve a couple of meetings either with the team or with stakeholders, which will take a few hours for the meetings and preparation. And then the rest of my time will be spent doing independent research and writing for the project. I'm now going to hand over to the next slide.
So why should you become a research assistant? Well, as you can see from the slides, the first reason really is that you get to engage in some really cutting edge legal research. Now, that's most obvious in some of our projects like crypto assets and autonomous vehicles. But even for some of the more obscure topics, you'll often be dealing with an area that doesn't have a traditional textbook treatment and traditional textbook treatment, and therefore you're likely to be the first person who's been considering that point of law. The second reason you should become or consider becoming a research assistant is that you're likely to get an insider view on government and policy development, lawmaking more generally. In the 3 months that I've been here, I've already interacted with the Treasury, the Bank of England, the Financial Conduct Authority, and Parliamentary Council. And engaging with those sort of stakeholders at such an early stage in your career, I think, is really quite likely to improve your legal skills and see how law changes over time. Thirdly, we're surrounded here at the Law Commission with some very talented and diverse colleagues. We have a huge range of and sort of breadth and depth of experience that allows us to add new perspectives to our work. And in terms of career development, the Law Commission is held in very high regard among legal professionals and therefore is likely to make an excellent addition to applications for pupillage or for training contracts. And for those of you that will be arriving as RAs, having lined those up already, your year or two at the Law Commission is also likely to be an excellent preparation for when you start in your chosen area of practice. I'm now going to pass on to Rosie.
Hi, I'm just going to give a bit of a brief overview of my own career path. So I started as a research assistant in 2020. I was already a qualified lawyer, but before I joined here, I've been doing some more junior roles in the civil service. The project that I worked on when I started as a research assistant ended up needing a legal assistant after I'd been there for a bit. So I applied for that, and the experience that I got through that role at that level meant that when a lawyer role came up in the criminal team, I was well positioned to apply for that. And I was lucky enough to get that. Also, whilst I was here in the criminal team, I was given an opportunity to do a secondment in the Ministry of Justice criminal legal policy team as well, for sort of 2 months to help with some implementation of our Law Commission work. And I've also temporarily acted up as the team manager of the criminal law team when our team manager was on a secondment elsewhere as well. So I think I've done most jobs now in the criminal law team. That's not everyone's experience, and I was really sort of lucky that the opportunities came up in my projects and in the areas that I was interested in, and also that I had my legal qualifications before I joined. But really just wanted to make the point that the opportunities are there to move around and to progress in the Law Commission, and for people interested in a career in legal reform. I think I'm heading to Sophia now.
Hey everyone, I'm Sophia. I'm the HR assistant for Law Commission, and I'll be walking you through the application process. So we aim to launch applications this year in early January 2025, and this is always done online, so please keep an eye out via civil service jobs or Ministry of Justice jobs. We will be publishing our guide for applicants in mid to late December, and this document will provide detailed information about each stage of the process to help you prepare. Our academic requirements remain as they have before, which is that you must have completed at least 2 years of legal studies. This means you should be on track to graduate and achieve your degree by September 2025 if you haven't already, because that's when most research assistants typically join us. 2 years of legal studies can be fulfilled either through an undergrad degree or 2 years of postgraduate studies. If you haven't yet graduated at the time of applying, which is in January, you must ensure that you are projected to meet our minimum academic criteria. This leads me into our second requirement, which is our minimum academic standard. We require first class or high 2-1 degree with evidence of some first class work. So we will launch early January, and the closing date will be Friday, 31st of January 2025. Next slide, please. So this is the process of the application. The first, as I said, is all online, and this is where you'll submit your CV and your success profile questions. I strongly consider to give yourself plenty of time to carefully review and then complete that application. The second stage after this is the written test. This will be sent to you via the email you used to apply, so please ensure that you will always check in on your junk and spam folders as well to avoid missing any key information. The written assessment must be completed within a specified time frame, but we will send you more details on this closer to the date. The final stage will be an interview with your chosen team. This can last up to 45 minutes. During the interview, you'll be assessed against success profiles and technical requirements outlined in the job advert, and you may have some reading required beforehand, which will be sent to you with the assessment as well. Next slide, please. So the MOJ, Ministry of Justice, operates a guaranteed interview scheme. If you consider that you have a disability and you meet our minimum criteria, we can guarantee an interview. However, please note you must still satisfy all of our criteria outlined in the job advert to be eligible for this scheme. If you also need any reasonable adjustments, and this includes for anyone who has a disability or any neurodivergence, please do let us know at any point in the process by emailing our recruitment mailbox, which I think Miles pointed out at the start of this, at the start of the meeting, but also we can send you that out at some point. Yeah, so now I think I'm handing back to Rosie.
Thanks. So just going to talk in a little bit more detail now about some of the stages of that process. So the online application is in 2 main parts. There's a CV section, which has a prescribed format, and the guide for applicants that will be available online in due course will set out exactly what you need to include and how to include it in that CV section. The most important thing, I think, is to make it really clear in the CV section how you meet the minimum criteria. So those 2 academic criteria that Sophia mentioned earlier, again, it will all be available when the job application is live, but just make sure that that's really clear in the CV section. Then the rest of the online form is in sort of questions with some free text answers, usually around 250 words, for you to describe how you meet the skills that we're looking for and the skills that we're testing. And some of the examples of the skills that we test for are there on the slide. And again, the job application, when it's live, will specify exactly the skills that you'll need to address in the application form and that you'll be asked about. Next slide, please. is just some tips really for filling in the form. So we don't expect you to have lots of legal experience at all, and you don't need it to sort of successfully fill in an application. Whatever experience you do have, I think about the skills that you've learned and developed in those different roles and how they might apply to the work that we do and the skills that we're looking for. So whether that's from education, whether it's from volunteering, if you've done any organisational work, any sort of team projects that you've been involved in, or any work experience as well. Think about how you can show that you can transfer those skills into the sort of experience and work that we do. And we've got some examples here of a sort of common work experience that some people applying might have of a shop assistant, and how you might be able to evidence and sort of show how you've developed the skills that we're looking for in that role. So whether you sort of worked as part of a small team in that role, did you have a role in sort of helping with new recruits and showing some sort of leadership skills there? Was there a particularly difficult interaction where you had to use really, really good communication skills? Or working under pressure with a really sort of tight timelines or a really busy experience. So that's how you can think about how to use the experience that you've had, even if it's in a non-legal setting, to show that you've got the skills that we're looking for here. And I'm handing now to Colin.
Thanks, Rosie. I'm Colin Oakley. I'm one of the team managers. I'm an interim team manager in the property, family and trust law team. I'm going to talk about the STAR method. It's on the screen. When making applications, you'll often see the STAR method mentioned. As mentioned on the slide, it stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. It's a way of ordering a response on an application form or in an interview, and it helps to make the most of your experience. There's 4 elements to STAR, and on application forms, often not that many words available to get them down. The example on the slide splits the words about evenly between the 4 elements, but I would tend to focus a little bit more on the action. What did you do? So a concise explanation of the situation and task, a bit more detail on what you did to address that, and the result. The slide suggests the result should be hopefully something good. I would definitely aim for something good. We're looking for how your actions achieved a result. For obvious reasons, a positive result leading from your actions is more compelling than a negative outcome. This is not really about STAR and more about applications generally, but you should focus very tightly on what the question is asking you. So if the skill or behaviour we're looking for is an example of, say, communication, first be clear what that behaviour is. There's guidance on that when you're applying into the civil service. Then think of your example, then write it down using STAR. And three final tips. Number 1, choose your examples wisely. Some skills and behaviours cover quite a lot of ground. You'll find some examples cover more of that ground than others. Choose the one that covers the most ground. Number 2, we are looking for what you did, not what the team did. So use I and not we when you're writing things down in STAR. Number 3, you don't have to go into massive detail, but don't leave out something that is key. It's a bit Goldilocks, but you're looking for just right. On an application form, it's possible, depending on the example and words available, that you could squeeze in 2 examples. However, I would say try to get in 1 well-developed example covering more ground, and that's better than 2 underdeveloped examples that cover the same or less ground overall. I'll now hand over to Georgina.
Thank you. Hi everyone again. So now I'll be dealing with Welsh language skills at the Law Commission. So if you are a Welsh speaker, please note this in the application form. The Law Commission represents both England and Wales, so we are keen to encourage applications from Welsh speakers. It's an important skill for any of the 4 teams. Welsh language skills help to support Welsh publications, Welsh-specific projects, and Welsh aspects of England and Wales projects. However, whilst these language skills are important for the Commission's work, it also provides invaluable experiences to you as a research assistant. Working at the Law Commission as a Welsh speaker has given me unique opportunities, such as engaging with leading practitioners and judges in the Welsh legal sphere. So if you do have any proficiency, please note this in the application form, to what level and whether this is written, oral, or both. And now I'll be passing back on to Lawrence, I think.
Hello. My name's Lawrence. I'm a lawyer on the criminal law team. So I'll speak about the written test for a moment. So if you're shortlisted, you'll be asked to do a written exercise. By shortlisted, I mean if you're selected for interview. And we're looking in the written exercise for your ability to understand and apply the law and to express your thoughts in clear, straightforward language. The exercise you do will be for the team for which you've applied. Each team uses a different test, but all have some common features, and I'll come to those. You'll have a choice of dates. You'll have 6 hours to do the exercise on your chosen date. The material is emailed to you. You return it by email. You will need to write somewhere between 1,250 and 1,750 words. So what are the common features of the written exercise? First, you're given some materials. These will usually be a factual scenario of some kind. So this might be set out as, for example, a request from a lawyer or a commissioner. It might include some fictionalised letters or documents from, for instance, campaigning groups, individuals or public bodies. You'll also be given legal materials, and these are usually extracts of legislation or extracts from cases, or perhaps a full judgment from a case. And then you are given a task as well. And the task will in some way require you to apply the law to the factual scenario. It might require you to explain sort of in a freestanding way what the law is in clear and straightforward terms. It may ask you to explain whether you think the law needs reform, and if so, how and why. You don't need any prior knowledge of the law in the area related to your test. You don't need to do any further reading or research beyond the materials you're given. And so subject areas we've used in the past have included licensing for selling alcohol, criminal offences associated with juries disclosing their deliberations, local authority support for disabled children, the rights of investors under the Companies Act. I'll turn now to the next slide, which is the interview. So if interviews vary a bit, but there are some common features. Typically, they're about 20 to 25 minutes long. There's a panel of 3 or 4 people, usually the team manager and 2 lawyers, maybe somebody from outside the Law Commission. Most teams now do interviews online. Some may give you a choice of in-person or online. And we can make any reasonable accommodations that may be needed if you have a disability. The aim of the interview, well, we want to know more about your ability to understand and apply the law, to engage with the substance and process of law reform, to communicate your thoughts. We want to know about the strengths you'd bring to the role, how you'd meet the challenges, your ability to do the tasks that the role requires. And importantly, in the interview questions, we're not trying to catch you out. Our aim is to give you an opportunity to demonstrate all those things. In terms of preparation for the interview, a few suggestions. First, familiarise yourself with the current projects being done by your team. You can do that by reviewing the guide for applicants and by looking at our website, including news pages for any announcements since that guide for applicants was published. Secondly, you should expect to be asked some things. So I think expect to be asked in some way why you want the job. And so to answer that, you think about why you want an RA post at the Law Commission on this team at this time. Think about how it fits with what you've done previously, what you might want to do subsequently. I think you should also expect to be asked in some way to discuss some aspect of law and its reform. Look back at the instructions for the written exercise to see if it will be discussed further in the interview. If you need to do any other preparation on specific legal issues, then you'll be provided with materials. Finally, I think, well, fourthly, look at the interview tips video on our RA recruitment page. And finally, practice. Research some typical research assistant interview questions online. Get a friend to ask you the questions. Practice giving some answers and get them to give you some feedback. And I'll hand back now, I think, probably to Miles, actually.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lawrence. We're now going to move on to the Q&A portion of the presentation. Actually, Abby, would you mind moving on to the last slide just there, just so we have the recruitment email up? Because I've got a few questions that have come in that are slightly more specific to individuals about individual requirements and potential accommodations. And just based on those ones, I think that's probably better if you take them to the recruitment inbox just there. But just now what we'll do is we'll answer some questions in a slightly more generic way so that we can be more helpful to everyone in attendance. Do feel free, though, to go to recruitment@lawcommission.gov.uk with any specific inquiries. So first one that we will come on to is a question here about flexible working. We have a question here from Miriam, which I've just published there in the chat for everyone to see. Miriam asks, could you tell me how this role works with regards to flexible working? Is it open to mature students and people with family responsibilities? Also, is it suitable for those at a later stage in their career? I'll come first to Sophia on the initial question of flexible working policy, and I'll come laterally to Rosie to answer the part of the question about those at a later stage of their career. So, Sophia, would you like to answer the first part there?
Yes, so we operate under flexi working time, which means that our core office hours are between 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. But we also have a hybrid working currently, which means that at minimum you have to be in the office at least 2 days a week. So as long as that kind of operates, you can operate work-life balance around that. In terms of it's open to everyone, including mature students, and Rosie can take that more in detail. But yeah, it's open to everyone, and we have plenty of people at the Commission who do have plenty of additional family and life responsibilities, including caring responsibilities as well. So there is flexi opportunity at the Commission.
Yes, so in terms of sort of being a suitable role for people later in their career, that's the way that I came into it. I was later on in my career. I think that we have a mix really now of research assistants that might be very early on in their careers, might be coming straight from university or from study, or people who are later on in their careers. Maybe they might be looking to restart a career in law or to move into law or policy, and it's a really good role to sort of see what the opportunities are and to learn the skills and make contacts as well. So I think really sort of at any stage of your career, it certainly could be suitable for you. I think just have a think about exactly what the role involves and whether that's something that you're looking to do at this stage of your career.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question we have is from Jake. Jake asks, what qualifications do you need to become a research assistant at the Law Commission? I'll pass this one over to Sophia, but then there is also a second part to that question, which is, are there subject-specific requirements? I think I'll let Sophia just allude to that, but then also it might be helpful if we come to someone else after Sophia's done talking there, just to talk a bit about how to highlight any particular subjects you've studied and make the most out of that on your application form. So, Sophia, I'll come to you on the first part of that question on what qualifications you need to become a research assistant.
Yep. So as going back to the criteria, so as long as you have a sufficient 2 years of legal studies, so if say your undergraduate degree was not in law, but then you have had sufficient experience since then and at least 2 years, and this includes training with the GLD, etc., then that will be sufficient experience. You just need to make sure that you can apply to the role your experience and those qualifications. So yeah, for your undergrad, say that's not in law, but you've had sufficient training since then, that is also accepted.
Fantastic, thank you. And would anyone, potentially one of the lawyers, like to come in on how to make the most on your application form of any particular subjects you studied at uni, or I guess any kind of experience that you've had with at uni?
I'm happy to, if needed.
Go for it.
So I came to the Law Commission straight from my undergraduate degree, so I didn't have necessarily professional experience to talk about, but I think there's lots of things from uni life that you can use to show what qualifications and requirements you meet. So one main example, for example, is if you write a dissertation or you did some form of research essay at university, you can speak to the skills you gain from that. Other things are things perhaps like working in a team environment, whether that be through competitions such as mooting or even working for like in a society or something that's had that team spirit that is part of the work as a research assistant at the Law Commission, and also outside of general university activities, even looking at professional experiences, working in environments that require levels of responsibility, such as working in a pub or in a shop. I think there's loads of experiences that you can use to speak to these different requirements.
Fantastic, thanks very much. The next question here is from Charlotte. Charlotte asks, is there an option to work part-time for 2 years while studying the bar course? I guess, Sophia, would you like to talk a bit about our part-time working policy there?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of research assistants do come and work as an RA while they're also planning to do their bar course. So that is absolutely part of the experience for many people. And part-time work is definitely an option. I think it sometimes depends on project. need, but it is definitely considered. Just let us know through any part of the application if you're looking for part-time or specific working patterns such as compressed hours and such, and that can be considered. So you just need to let us know, and that might factor into the project as well.
Thanks very much, Sophia. The next question we have here is about opportunities for lawyers from alternative or other jurisdictions outside of England and Wales. They asked, do you have any opportunities for experienced lawyers from foreign jurisdictions? Sophia, would you like to talk a little bit about the policy with respect to those applying from outside of England and Wales?
Yep. So again, we've had research assistants and lawyers who are not from originally from the UK. So I think recently we've had RAs from New Zealand and Australia. So the main for us is that you have got the right to work or a visa, to make sure that you have the right to remain here and work here during the role. So we have had plenty of people, come from foreign jurisdictions, but it's just making sure that you have the right to work whilst you're in the role. And also I would recommend having some knowledge of British law at the time of applying and having that sufficient knowledge for your application.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sophia. The next question is really more about kind of building up your application and making the most of the experience that you've got. The question reads, currently I'm a second year at uni. What would you recommend I do right now, apart from focusing on my grades, in order to be able to build a CV worth applying for a position of research assistant at the Law Commission? I suppose, would any of the lawyers like to come in on that?
I'm happy to come in on that, if you like, Miles.
Excellent.
I think there's a few things you can do. One is if there are opportunities to do extended pieces of research and writing in the course of your degree, I think that is really a useful thing. Cyber referred to it before in terms of if you've done a dissertation, that's the kind of thing you can put on your CV. I think if you're kind of really looking ahead at the Law Commission or any specific area of practice, it might work the same way. If you've got a bit of coherence possibly to some of the modules you've done, so if you're interested in public law, you might say, well, I would look at doing a module if there's one available in aspects of administrative law, or if criminal, something around criminal evidence. So I think anything you can do that gives a bit of focus, but especially developing research and writing that you can demonstrate, including any opportunities to publish anything, whether on blogs, in journals, or what have you. So those are some things that might help. Others may have other thoughts.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lawrence. I'm just having a look through some of the other questions that we've got here. We've got a few more questions here about remote working, which I think we've already just covered. We've got another question here about when exactly is it that the assistant jobs will start. So to be clear, if applications will be opening in January, the recruitment process will take place after that, and then the job itself, if you are successful, would start at the beginning of September. So just to clarify that up there, I think that is most of the questions that we have. What I think I'll do is I'll leave it for just a couple more minutes and see if we have any more questions coming through. But in the meantime, let's see. Fantastic. Well, okay. What I'll do then, I think let's call this to a close. If you guys do have any more questions with regards to specific things that are more specific to you that maybe aren't answered by our guide for applicants, which we'll be getting published before the recruitment cycle opens, then do feel free to come in and have a chat with us about that. The email is there on the slide, recruitment@lawcommission.gov.uk. Thanks very much, and we hope to see you apply soon.